Hello friends, welcome. Friends, mobile tariffs have become a point of controversy. When the tariffs were raised, people had a lot of backlash and they started moving to BSNL. Now recently, TRAI has come out with an amendment and they are directing the mobile operators to come out with voice and SMS plans. Now there are a lot of anxiety among the mobile operators because they feel that it's going to undermine their profitability. Now friends, given this tussle which is going on between the mobile operators, the TRAI and the consumer, I thought that this is a very important opportunity for me to analyze the tariff structure of the mobile operators and how it resonates with the affordability of our countrymen, especially those areas which are not having disposable income good enough for paying for these services. That's the whole purpose of this video. I'm going to do a deep dive and analyze the tariff structure and how it resonates with the consumer's ability to pay, right? Now, friends, how do I do this work? Because it has to be done scientifically, mathematically, right? You can't just simply do it on a basis of conjecture. So, fortunately, friends, I came across with this report, which was published just a couple of days back, and you can find this report in the website of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So you'll find that this came out on 27th December 2024. Now friends, what is this report all about? This report is right in front of you. It basically says Household Consumption Expenditure Survey of 2023-24. Now friends, this is a pretty important document. Everybody who is interested in finance, who wants to understand the market, should look at this document. And this document actually gives us this document can be described in the, if you read the introduction, you can understand what this document is all about. This introduction gives the first paragraph can be you can understand the document. It says the Household Consumption Expenditure HCES is designed to collect information on consumption and expenditure of household or goods and services. It helps to understand the consumption expenditure pattern and standard of living and well-being of households, and it is used to prepare the weighting diagram for compilation of consumer price index. Now it might sound a little bit complicated. Let me simplify this. Now friends, let's talk about an individual. Any individual in our country has got a certain spending pattern. So there are different basket of commodities on which certain amount of money is allocated. Now these basket of commodities on which the monies are allocated keeps changing over a period of time depending upon standard of living and depending upon the way the people generally evolve their lifestyle. Now depending upon what they are spending, you will be able to extrapolate that what kind of allotment that they do on a particular segment, right, of their requirement. For example, mobile services. Now, if you know that how the spending pattern of the Indian population are allocating on the mobile services, then you will be able to estimate whether the tariffs that the operators have announced whether resonates with the spending pattern of the population or not. Now, this report is a very recent report. It has collected data in the financial year FY 23-24, and there was another report which came out last year on which I already did an article, but I thought of revisiting this topic because this is based on latest data. Now, friends, I will show you where you will find our information of interest, which I am going to use in my analysis. There are two areas, two important portions of this document which are going to be very useful in our analysis. The first is a table which I'm going to show you here. Now, let me just zoom out a little bit and so that you can understand what this table is all about. This is statement 4, absolute and percentage breakup of MPC. MPC is the monthly consumption of the individual, the household, right, on various commodities. Now the item groups are listed in the y-axis, and then you have got various columns, right, which gives MPC in rupees, absolute term in rural and urban areas against all these commodities. So if you look at all these commodities, they are broadly defined into different categories. Now I am assuming that mobile services spend lies in this particular category, which is called consumer service excluding conveyance, right? Here you will find that for the recent report, which is FY 23-24, The rural segment in India spends roughly around 217 rupees, and the urban survey segment spend about 400 rupees. And the percentage share, right, of the total commodity on this particular category, which is consumer services excluding conveyance, is 5.25% in the rural segment and 5.72% in the urban segment. And this particular information is going to be pretty useful for our analysis. Now, there is one more aspect which is going to be very important when we do this analysis. This is not just about this, because this is a pan-India or a generic number. Now, what this report also does is it classifies, both the rural and the urban segment into different fractile classes of MPC. So you will see that 0 to 5% of the population, how much is their overall household income, right? Average MPC, these are all given here, right? For both FY23 and FY24. Now, this piece of information is also going to be important for me to classify those numbers that we saw in this particular table right now, right? For rural and urban area, right? Which is regarding conveyance and excluding a consumer service excluding consumer, which I'm going to map into these fractile classes for both urban and rural area, right? Because without mapping it, I will not be able to really ascertain how the population is going to be impacted. So this is the gist of this report, and how I'm applying this report in this article, which I wrote, and how to read this article is a very important topic of this video. So first, what I do is, I actually, you already saw the breakup. So in my first part of my article, I give a snapshot as to how this breakup of items looks for the financial year FY23-24 for urban as well as for rural. So let me just zoom out. I'm just listed out the same information that you in the table in this particular in this diagram. So you'll see that the breakups are all given here. And what I've done is I've captured all the information for the various rounds of survey. So it kind of gives you a trend also that how this item, which is item number 8, has over the period of time changed for urban. For example, you see the urban there, the change hasn't been significant over the total, MPC, which is roughly around 4.73, and now it is 5.72. Now, if you look at rural, the same item, it was 2.98 in the year 1999 to 2000, and now this from 2.98 it has basically increased to 5.25. So there has been a significant change in the consumption pattern for consumer services excluding conveyance, right? Where I feel the mobile tariff should map out, right? Now, after having seen how this mapping takes place, what I have done is I need to do the analysis. Now let's go step by step of the analysis. It will look a little bit complicated, but just be with me. We will understand the whole thing. Now friends, what is our purpose? Our purpose is to segment this information that we have been able to extract from this report, and map it to the specific operators, right? And also to the specific circle, right? Which is a very, very difficult task to do, because it will require a lot of assumptions and lot of calculations to be made. So the first step that I do, what I intend is to segment operator circle-wise revenue into rural and urban packets. Because friends, you know that TRAI comes out with the revenue for each and every operator on a circle basis, which is the AGR. Now, this is an aggregated number. It does not segment out this number between urban and rural categories. Since I do not have the urban and rural categories of this number, how do I know that what is the operator's revenue emanating from urban areas for a particular operator, let's say Bharti, and how much of its revenue is emanating from the rural area? So that exercise I have to do. Now, for that, the first step that I have to do is to get the household information, which is broken down into rural and urban areas. And what is this household information? This household information is the total household that India has, right? This is basically in 1,000. I think this has to be multiplied by 1,000, right? In order to get the absolute number. So if you add these two numbers, both this number as well as this number, it basically translates to the overall population of India approximately, except children, right? All those people who are actually in the consumption mode, maybe the children part also has to be might have been taken into factors. I really don't know the details because I'm just going with the high level part of the report, but I can see that these numbers are basically almost approximately adds up to the Indian population. So this is the total household which have been broken down in rural and urban areas, which I have extracted from this report, which is given in the last page of the report. So if you go into the last page of this report, you will find that this information is given here, right? The number of sample household, and they have estimated the household in hundreds, right? So this information is available here. Once having got this information, I can create a distribution, which is what? Which is this divided by this number. So this 60.4% is the number which is AP's number 151584 divided by 1937883. So this comes out to be 60.4%. Like that, I calculate all the distribution for all the other circles for both rural as well as urban areas. After having done that, what I have to do? The next step, because of what is my objective? My objective is segmenting the operator circle-wise revenue into rural and urban brackets. So for that, what I need is the MPC for these circles, absolute values, rural and urban, right? And this MPC value, MPC is monthly, what is the full form MPC? MPC's full form is given here. When I start my article here, you'll just see this. So it is basically saying monthly per capita consumption expenditure. So the per capita consumption expenditure, monthly per capita consumption expenditure can be extracted from the report, both in rural and urban areas for various states. What I've done is I have mapped those to various circles, right? Because there are multiple states in India, but there are only 22 circles. So you have to map them to the respective circles. So this is the number I got. Now, the percentage distribution of estimated household I can get from this particular column, right? This column I have the number. So I have just reproduced these columns, adjacent to these numbers. Then what I do is I calculated the blended MPC, and the blended MPC is what? This multiplied by this plus this multiplied by this. So this blended MPC number can be very easily calculated. After having calculated the blended MPC, what I can do, I have to calculate the rural revenue distribution as well as the rural distribution and the urban distribution. So how I can calculate that number? I can simply divide this by this and multiply it by this. And then for the urban, I can divide by this by this, and then multiply it by this, right? Because this is the estimated household distribution based on numbers. These are the actual revenue number or the value. Now, these are numbers, these are value. I can't use this distribution because this is not representing the financial part of the distribution. So for me to calculate the financial part of the distribution, I actually have to use the blended thing, and based on these numbers, these values, this distribution, revenue distribution for a particular business based from urban as well as rural can be calculated. So probably, friends, you have understood this table, why this table is so important, and this particular calculation is so important. After having done that, what I need the operator's revenue, right, of the last financial year broken down by circles. And that you can very easily get from the TRAI's AGR report. And I have taken the last 4 quarters and I have just aggregated them. So one assumption that I made is the pan-India revenues, which are the NLD and the ILD circles, I have distributed, based on the proportion of their basic service revenue. So that jugglery I have done, otherwise I could not have done that calculation, right? So you will not find any pan-India or national license revenue separated out, because I have all added it into this particular revenue in order to ensure that this calculation is reasonably accurate, right? So probably you understand what I'm saying, that you have got USL license which are circle specific, you have got NLD license which are national specific. Now those NLD license revenues are actually emanating on because of the circle business. So I have distributed them based on already circle distribution of their revenue based on their access license. That's all. So once I have these three for the 3 operators, then I basically have copied the same table here. You see the same table here, those 2 columns. Now what I have to do, I have to calculate the distribution of rural and urban revenues for these 3 operators, which is very simple to do now, because I know this overall number. I simply multiply it by the rural percentage, I get the rural number for Bharti. Similarly, I have the urban, the overall number for RJIO multiplied by the rural percentage, I get the revenue for the which is originating from the rural business for RJIO. For similarly, I can do it for urban areas also. After having done that, what I need to do? Now I have to calculate the operator's revenue distribution across rural and urban category. Now, since I already have these numbers, calculating revenue distribution is very easy. What I have to do is that I simply divide this number by this total number. So this number comes out to be 9.2% for Bharti. Similarly, all other numbers have been similarly calculated because the pan-India number, the overall aggregate number adds up to be 100%. So this distribution now I have. So initially I had the aggregated distribution. Now I have the distribution broken down by rural and urban areas for all the three operators. Now after that, what I need to do is that now I have to calculate the absolute value of the spend of consumer service excluding conveyance, right? For each and every circle. Now, fortunately, this number on an aggregated basis has been given out in the table, right? In the page 11 of statement number 7 of 2023-24 report, this number has been given. Now, once this number, you extract this number out, you list this number out, and if you've seen, I told you that percentage number, right? In this table, this number, where is the number which I showed you? That the bucket, how much is the bucket which is getting consumed in case of conveyance services here? This is the number which I showed you. If you see this 5.25 to 5.72, which is the conveyance excluding consumer service excluding conveyance. So I have used this number here. I put this number here. Then what I'm doing, I multiply each of the MPC for rural and urban segment, which are listed on the table with this number to calculate the absolute value for all the circles for rural as well as urban. So this number is the absolute value of all rural and urban for MPC for unspend of consumer services excluding conveyance. Now I think probably up to now you are with me, right? Then what we have to do, but what I have to do is that I have to estimate the MPC of consumer service by fractile classes. Friends, I showed you, right, in this report, there are 2 pages where the distribution is given based on fractile classes of MPC across the various segments of the population, based on their percentage. From 0 to 5, how much is the MPC? From 5 to 10. The average MPC is what the number but that they talk about. But individually, the MPC numbers are all different for different segment of the people, right? Like 95 to 100%, it is quite large, and for 0 to 5%, it is quite small, right? For both rural and urban areas. So, since I know this number from this particular report, what I do, I first basically put out this number, whatever the number that has been given, the same numbers I have just extracted out, these numbers. These numbers for both rural and urban area, I have extracted out in this table, which you see here. I've done nothing. The aggregated number is this, 4122 for rural and then 6996 for urban, right? Then what I do is I do a very interesting thing. What I do is that I divide, because this number is available in the report. So I divide this number I divide with this number. And this ratio can be calculated, which means that this number, what is the ratio of the aggregated number for the individual classes, right? Some numbers will be greater than 1, some numbers will be less than 1. And you will see that why I need this number and how I am going to use this number for doing the analysis, which we have targeted to do which I have explained in the beginning of this video. Now what I do, step 5, calculating MPC for consumer services by fractile class for rural urban segment for each operator. This is an aggregated number, right? These are not individual operator centric, but I need an operator centric number. So what I do is I do the following. This is a little bit of a tricky. Now let me explain what I mean. For that, let me go to the Excel sheet so that you understand. So this is what I have to calculate. This number I have to calculate it. So what I have done is I actually have done a sum product, because as I told you that I have already calculated the absolute numbers for the consumer spend on consumer services excluding conveyance for the respective circles, right? This number I have showed you, right? You might have seen here. This is the number I showed you recently. Where is it? This number, right? In this report. So this number I already have. Now what I'm doing is, since I have this number and I also know the revenue distribution of the individual operators, right? This revenue distribution, which I have calculated, because if you recall, this number I just calculated earlier in my article. Where did I calculate? These numbers I have calculated, right? These numbers, which is step number 2. Since I know this number, right? So what I can do is that I can use this number and then I can multiply the individual MPC of consumer services for each and every circle. Then I will be able to get the aggregated number for Bharti. Let me show you so that you don't get confused here. So what I have done is that, if you see, let me just do a zoom in a little bit so that you understand what I am talking about. This is the cell which I am calculating. And what is the calculation of this cell? This is the sum product of this and this for Bharti, which is the rural segment. You can see that. So when I go here, you see that this is the sum product of this and this is the sum product of this. So this number translates into 242 for Bharti as far as rural is concerned. Then for Reliance Jio, similarly, this number will be 235, right? And for Vodafone Idea, this number will translate to 261. Now I have the aggregated number for all India, right? For rural MPC, for Bharti, Reliance Jio and Vodafone Idea. Similarly, I can calculate for urban, for Bharti, Reliance Jio and Vodafone Idea, right? You are with me till now? A little bit complicated, just be with me. And you can tell me whether I have committed any mistake or not. So this, till now, this is the step which I actually have. Then what I do is, then I calculated this individual number for each and every operator for this fractile classes. And this, how do I calculate? This is pretty simple. Let me show you the Excel sheet. Here, what I do is that I simply multiply this number, the pan-India number, with the ratio of this divided by this, which I showed you. And this ratio is the reference, means if the pan-India number is 242, then what is this number going to be referring to, this fractile class, which I can get from this number, which is given in the report, right? So on the basis of that, I calculated for Bharti, calculated this for Reliance Jio and calculated this for Vodafone Idea for all the fractile cars, means what is the spending pattern for the consumer, for each and every operator for these fractile classes. Now, why this is not same across the operators? Because the revenue numbers of the operators are different. That's why I did it for operator specific. Otherwise, I would have taken a generic number and done away with it, right? So the same thing I have done for urban areas as well, right? So now you will see that what happened. Now this is very important. When the tariff hike happened, the tariff hike led to, I have just taken two tables here. One is for the, let me just show you the table. Let me just do a zoom in. And in this zoom in, you will find that there are two tables here which I am showing here. The first table is the tariff hike increase for 28 days validity. So you will see that for 28 days, the revised plan is 299 rupees, right? For 1 GB per day data. And for 1.5 GB 28 day validity, it is 349. So it has increased by roughly around 16 to 25%. It has increased from 12 to 19%. But these are basically for data plan. Now let's talk about the voice plans. Now if you look at the voice plans, you will find that roughly it is around 200 rupees. Now if you calculate these numbers, and you can basically, let me just zoom in a little, and I'll show you what I basically mean here. Now if you do the calculation for the full month and then include GST for the voice plans, the number comes out to be 257, which is the minimum number. Now you compare this with this table, right? 257, remember this number 257. You will find that 257 falls here, roughly here, in this category of the fractile class, 70 to 80%. Which means that for Bharti, 0 to 70% of the population can't even afford a voice plan. Do you understand what I'm talking about? 70% of the rural population cannot even afford a voice plan. Similarly, for Reliance Jio, this number is higher because this falls in this bracket. For Bharti, it is in the borderline, right? So you will see that for Vodafone Idea, this number is basically here, 70, 273, 70, roughly around here. So 60% of the population, because Vodafone Idea mainly operating in urban areas. That's why. Similarly, for urban areas, if you look at the tariff plan, you will find that around 20% of the population, right, or maybe around 10% of the population will find this plan not very aligned with their consumption pattern, which they intend to spend. And for Reliance Jio, this is basically falling in this bracket, 10 to 20%. This is bracket roughly, or maybe more than that, because it's around 257, right? And for Vodafone Idea, this falls in this particular bracket from the urban area. So what I am trying to say is that even the affordable voice plans that are out there in the public domain, the people cannot afford. So you can understand that why there has been SIM consolidation and why people are running to BSNL. So that's the problem that we are able to see. And this analysis is pretty useful for everybody to understand, because this is a pretty important document, right? Now, I think after having explained to you this, you probably now understand that why there has been churn from the mobile operators, why there is SIM consolidated, because the operators, the consumers really don't have the affordability to pay because of this spending pattern, which we see in the report, the government report. Operators are also, negatively impacted, because the operators basically have a problem, because they can't really, how do we deal with the situation of the voice and SMS directive which the government of India has given, because they can't really continue with the voice plans. If they do, then there will be a perception issue. So all this I have explained in my earlier article. So just, because already 26 minutes have passed in this video. So the gist and net, let me summarize. If you look at the government report, which gives us the monthly average spending pattern or the consumption pattern for Indian household, you will find that the mobile tariff plans are becoming increasingly unaffordable for a large section of Indian rural consumers. And there is also a sizable part of the Indian urban consumers who are finding this unaffordable based on the analysis which I have showed you right now, right? And going forward, it will be very difficult for the mobile operators to come out with increased tariffs, because these numbers are not going to change drastically over a short period of time. It takes a lot of time for these numbers to change. The consumption pattern changes over a long period of time. And given the stress that we are seeing in the economy, it is unlikely that there will be a significant change in the consumption pattern. So the mobile operators are really into a catch-22 situation. They really don't know what to do. See, higher tariffs actually helps to sustain their business plan, because they have spent so much of money in spectrum and they are doing a lot of capex, etc. But if the consumer cannot pay over a long period of time, and if they are going to get stretched out, then how they will be able to get the money out of their pockets, given the stress that we are seeing in the economy and given the consumption pattern of a particular vertical that is clearly reflected in the report. Now, friends, I will let you make your own judgment. You can see this document. This is analysis, which is right there in my website. I'm going to paste the link of this article. You go through this and you will find this report pretty interesting, and this analysis is pretty interesting. I don't know, hardly there are any analysis like this which is out in the public domain, and that's why I went out to do this analysis, to give you a scientific flavor as to why tariff hikes are so much being resented in our country. Why it is not resonating. It is not possible that the operators will come out with tariff hikes on their own and without any public resentment, because the consumers are getting stressed out because of their spending pattern, which is clearly reflected in the government's report. Thank you, friends, for your time. I hope that you found this video useful. Do go and read my article. You will get a better understanding of what I have done, and if there are any flaws in my analysis, please let me know in the comment section. Thank you, friends, for your time. I'll come back with a new video next time.